Welcome back to the Language Arts Gallery. Today we're going to start a new genre of writing in our writing workshop series for young learners. We're going to be talking about writing a fictional narrative. Now you can find this lesson and all my writing workshop lessons in my Teachers Pay Teachers store, and that is linked in the video description. So this lesson today is going to be aimed at students who are around fourth grade, but it is something that you can use with older students. I think this lesson in particular would be good with students in fifth, sixth, or even seventh grade. I think narrative text is something that a lot of students need a lot of support with. I think as you work through this genre of writing with younger students, it might be a real challenge for students who are second or third grade, but if you've got students who are really advanced and they need an extension activity, this lesson might serve them well. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to talk first with our students about what fictional narratives actually are. And I paired this lesson, this series of lessons, with a unit I was doing where animals teach us lessons. So if you're teaching folk tales or you're teaching myths, you might choose to use this series of lessons with those stories. So we are going to work through first what a fictional narrative is. It's a made-up story. And since it's not true, we can be as creative as we want. Personal narratives are something I teach with my young learners from first grade, but fictional narratives are a bit different because students have to create their characters. They're not simply telling about an experience they had, they're being creative. For some students, this is a challenge, but I try and present it to my students as this is an opportunity for us to be creative. We can write about whatever we want. We can write about people with magical powers. We can write about animals that like to talk. We can write about animals that don't exist, like unicorns, or if they want to write about dinosaurs that are extinct, they can. Or they can write about normal people who are simply doing something that's not true. And that's great to pair with realistic fiction. So remember, the thing that I try to impress upon my students is that it's their story, so they can be as creative as they want to be. I also teach fictional narratives around a problem and solution text structure. And in a moment, we're going to look at what the structure of a problem solution essay looks like, the beginning, middle, and the end, and how we fit this to a problem and solution text structure. So the problem is something that our main character has to solve, figure out, or do. Now, you may teach about protagonist and antagonist, particularly if you're using this with older students. If that's what you're after, I have another series of lessons on the fictional narrative that's in my creative writing course. So sometimes the characters will solve the problem on their own. Sometimes they need help from others. And this can help our students to build out the characters in their text. And we often talk about creating several small problems. And we're going to talk about this notion of escalation and climax later. And that's something where students are going to be working through these smaller problems as they work towards the solution to their bigger problem that's framing the story. So in the beginning of the text, we're going to introduce the problem. In the middle, we work towards the solution. And then finally, when we get to the end, we get to that solution and we talk about what we learned from it. So sometimes we don't solve the problem. Sometimes it's simply a resolution to the problem where we've found a way to deal with the problem or to accept the situation, and the characters may in fact not find a solution, but they may find a way to accept what they're dealing with. So let's look at an example, and this is one of my favorite ones. It's about Polly and Krabby. Polly the parrot loved to talk and talk and talk. She would chatter from morning to night, telling everyone about her shiny feathers and all the words she could say. Down by the beach, Krabby the crab had heard enough. Krabby liked peace and quiet, and Polly's nonstop squawking gave him a headache. One afternoon, Krabby scuttled over to Polly, waving his big red claw. Polly, can you be quiet for just 5 minutes? He snapped. Polly squawked back. Quiet? But I have so much to say. The two began to argue loudly with each other. Other animals, like the sea turtles and seagulls, covered their ears and wished they would stop. Finally, an old wise dolphin named Dolly jumped out of the water and spoke. You two need to listen as much as you talk, she said. If you never listen, you miss out on new ideas and new friends. Polly and Krabby looked at each other. They both realized they'd been so busy talking and complaining that they hadn't really listened at all. They decided to have a listening contest. Whoever stayed quiet and listened the longest would win. In the end, Polly and Krabby discovered that listening was harder and more important than they thought. Polly learned that being a good friend meant sometimes letting others speak. Krabby learned that being patient could make a noisy world feel a little friendlier. From then on, the beach was a much calmer and happier place. So we talked in this story about our two main characters, Polly and Krabby, and how Dolly the dolphin helped them to solve a problem and learn an important lesson. And they learned that it's not good to talk all that much, and it's more important to actually listen to what others say. So now that we see a lesson that Polly and Krabby learned from another animal, Dolly the dolphin, it's a good opportunity to get our students to brainstorm some ideas about other lessons we can learn from animals. Okay, one might be you need to believe in yourself. You need to have courage to overcome fear. You need to help others. Be honest. Never give up. Or don't be arrogant. So, in the beginning of our story, we talked about who the characters were: Polly, Krabby, Dolly, and the beach animals. The setting is the beach, it doesn't change. And the problem is that Polly and Krabby are fighting because Krabby thinks Polly talks too much. In the middle, the animals work together to work towards a solution. Things are very difficult at first. They're arguing. The beach becomes very noisy, and all the animals there, we talked about the sea turtles, they're very unhappy. Eventually, Dolly the dolphin gives them some advice. She tells them to practice listening to one another, so they decide to have a listening contest. Then we move to the end and the resolution to our problem. Polly and Krabby learn that listening is more difficult and more important than talking a lot. And it's Dolly the dolphin that taught them this. So after we go through that mentor text, I've got a graphic organizer that comes with this lesson. I hand it out to all my students and I'll send them back to the carpet where they're going to brainstorm ideas for their own fictional narrative. They're going to think about the characters, the setting, the problem, and the solution, and what lesson they want to teach their audience through that story. Now, the lesson that they're going to teach should align here with the animal that teaches the lesson. So those two boxes should inform one another. Okay, and you've got an outline here that you can give some more direct instruction to the students. After the students go back to their seat for independent work time, they can come back to the carpet and sit in the author's chair where they can share details of their fictional narrative or what they brainstormed for their fictional narrative. All right. Thank you so much for joining me for the first lesson in our fictional narrative. Please remember to subscribe to my channel so you get all the videos in this genre, as well as all my other academic and creative writing videos. And I'll see you in our next lesson.